Welcome to Gutter Life. This is Will Sanchez. My special guest today is Jessica Purcell. She is a triathlete with City Coach. Jessica has a very, very interesting story to tell. I'm thrilled to have Jessica as a guest.
Thanks, Will. You can call me Jess. Or Jay-Z, as I'm known. My married last name is Zebrak, and so people call me Jay-Z.
Jay-Z?
That's right, Jay-Z.
Well, Jay-Z, before we go into your story of recovery, let's start introducing you to our audience. Tell us where you were born, a little bit about your childhood.
I'm from Pennsylvania, otherwise known as Pennsyltucky. So I was born in Wyomissing, Pennsylvania, which is a little borough outside of Reading, which is a little city outside of Philadelphia. So when people ask me where I'm from, I usually just say I'm from Philadelphia. And I got an older brother and a younger brother. So I'm the middle child and the only girl.
Oh,
double deadly combo.
Cool, so you were probably a favorite.
No, I wouldn't say that. I think I just, in typical middle child fashion, just kind of got lost in the fray. You know, and never really tried to make any ruckus for my parents, never tried to give them any problems. I just let my brothers just take that rebellion and run with it. So that was kind of my deal.
What kind of activities did you do as a child?
Kind of played every sport that I possibly could. I went to Catholic school my entire life, literally. Kindergarten through college through law school was Catholic school. And they have this thing when you're in like grade school, it's called CYO, Catholic Youth Organization. So I played volleyball, basketball, and softball. And then I also swam during the summers. I was on the swim team. Mm-hmm. And all of my friends were playing field hockey. So I was like, oh, I want to play, you know, field hockey too. I've been this tall, like I'm about 5'7". I've been this tall since I was about 11. I just was super tall, and I think the basketball coach was like, cool, she'll be good at basketball. I was terrible. I was absolutely terrible at basketball. I hated it. It was like, it was traumatizing.
Where did you go to college?
I went to Georgetown. My major was accounting.
Accounting?
Accounting.
That's a great major.
Sure, if you like math, which I did at the time. But then, of course, so I graduated in 2002. And obviously 9/11 happened that September, right before I graduated. Okay. And so it made, as like with a lot of people in New York and DC, it kind of made you kind of rethink life goals. And I knew that I would probably take a year and volunteer and give back for a year. And then after doing that, I kind of came up with the idea to go to law school. So I ended up going to law school and not being an accountant. And I'd originally wanted to do child advocacy work because in my volunteer work for that year, I was like a volunteer house parent on Staten Island.
House parent? So you were in a...
sort of, I was a live-in house parent, volunteer for an organization called Boys Hope, Girls Hope. And what they do is they take at-risk but academically motivated youth and put them in private schools and provide like the at-home tutoring and just structure, which they don't really have at home since they're like quote-unquote at-risk youth. What it turned into on Staten Island really was basically like emergency foster care. And these kids, not only were they at-risk youth and academically motivated, they couldn't go home on the weekends, whereas most kids like in this program would go home to their families on the weekends. Right. These boys didn't really have anywhere to go, and so it was really just a 24/7, 365, live with these kids, really get to know them, just take care of them like as a parent would, you know, drive them to and from school, tutor them, make dinner.
Well, obviously you were their second mom, or probably their only mom.
I guess you could say that. I mean, I was like 22 at the time, so 22. And they were, you know, anywhere from 13 to like one of the kids turned 18.
That inspired you to transition into lawyer?
Yeah, I was like, well, I'll take the LSATs and see how I do, see if any law schools take me. And I got accepted to a law school down in TC, to Catholic University, and I went in with the intent of maybe doing child advocacy work when I graduated. And then, as any lawyer out there who sees this will know, all of a sudden you graduate with this mountain of debt, and to do public interest work is not going to pay the bills. So that went by the wayside.
Okay. Now, did you meet your husband at law school?
No, I didn't. I met him while I was in law school. You know, at the time I wasn't really like looking for any kind of relationship. I was about to graduate law school. At that time I had accepted an offer of a commission into the Army JAG. It would have been fun, it would have been interesting. Obviously I didn't do that.
They did a TV show, so...
No, I know,
you weren't inspired by that?
I thought it would be a cool thing to do. I was really just interested in maybe... I knew I could do family law for, you know, military servicemen at the base at that time. So before I got to that point, I'd met the man who was going to become my husband in March before I graduated from law school.
Okay.
And I was about to take the bar exam, and a good friend of mine who had graduated a year before me started dating a guy around March before graduation, and so they dated, everything was good, and then they broke up right before she sat for the bar. She failed the bar exam. So I was like, I'm not going to date anyone because I got to take the bar exam. I don't want to fail the bar exam. So I told him, like, I'm not interested in really dating you until after the bar.
So that made you even more attracted to you.
I hope so. And I thought, like, in the back of my mind, I knew there was something, like, special about him. So I was like, well, if he's still around after the bar exam, then we'll see what happens. And we started to kind of date and really get closer and closer to each other, and we were just dating. So we came to sort of this, I guess, agreement. I'm moving in with you because I love you, and I think I can see myself living with you the rest of my life. I can see myself marrying you. We got married in 2009, April 26th.
During that time, were you active? Were you swimming, biking?
Yeah. I had started doing triathlon, so we really started to get serious, not to backpedal, but just to backpedal a little bit. We really started to get serious, my husband and I did my first Ironman out in Arizona in 2007, and he came with me and cheered me on like a champ. I mean, he is hands down the best cheerleading spouse anyone could ever wish for. I mean, he's all over the course, like popping up, like he's got like a plan.
And you were pretty good off the bat?
No.
Because you became pretty good.
Well, thank you. I like to think that I started to increase like my placings over the course of time. But I grew up on the swim team, and I wasn't a half bad swimmer.
Okay.
I actually was a pretty decent swimmer.
So you, of the three, swimming was the strongest at the time?
At the time, I would say swimming and biking were the strongest, because I won a bike race when I was 8 years old.
Oh my gosh.
That's right.
And the running was? The
running was something I kind of did like on the side. You know, my dad was an athlete. Ran track and played basketball in high school, and then ran track in college. So he would go running, you know, at night after work, and my brothers and I would ride our bikes along with him while he went for runs. And so I knew it was sort of in the blood to be a runner.
Eventually, I guess you did the half Ironman. And
I did a half Ironman in Florida with my roommate from law school at the time. And I think 2006 was when we did the Florida half Ironman. And I think that's the first year that the Ironman, capital I Ironman, started having half Ironman distances. And so we're like, oh, well, you know, I could never do a full Ironman, but I think I could do a half. So we started swimming at the law school pool, and we bought bikes, and we would go running together, because she and I had ran the Marine Corps Marathon together by that time.
Oh, so you have done a marathon.
Yeah, I had done a marathon. So we flew down to Florida after I graduated from law school and did the Florida half Ironman.
Which is how you celebrated your...
Which is how I celebrated law school graduation. Exactly. And that was like one of the worst race experiences of my life, but also one of the best. Like, it's kind of what a lot of people say after their first marathon. You know, they're like, it sucked, it was awful, but as soon as I crossed the finish line, like, I'm going to sign up for my next one. So it just, like, I remember, you know, this was the first time that they'd done it in Florida. It was on their Fort Wilderness resort thing, so we swam in, like, a pond there or something, and then biked the Florida Orange Grove roads, and then ran on this like dirt path around the Fort Wilderness Resort.
Dirt path. That's easy.
And I was so slow and like fat and just sad that I was like walking, running. They ran out of cups of water, and it was like 95 degrees. I was like, oh my God, you know, I thought I was gonna die. But finally I finished, and I see Kate at the finish line, and we hug and we're happy. We go back to this like cheap hotel that we'd rented. And we ate our dinner from the night before, like the leftovers that we brought home. We didn't have a refrigerator in our hotel room, so we put the pizza in a dark closet, thinking that it would be nice and cool and keep the pizza cold. It didn't. Well, we didn't care, because we just were so hungry. We're like, we don't care.
Luckily, pizza's not destructible.
Yeah, right. We'll eat this pizza from the closet after the half Ironman. So that got me hooked. I went home and signed up for an Ironman. Obviously,
the Ironman Arizona was a much better experience.
It really was. You know, it wasn't fast by any means whatsoever, but it kind of got me, like, I really enjoyed the process of training for it, and I really just enjoyed. Yeah, just all by my lonesome.
Sometimes with your boyfriend cheering you on.
Now husband, yeah, you know. And,
was he a biker? I think he was at some point.
He was a runner.
He was a runner. Okay.
He was a fantastic track star in high school. And so when I met him just to dating, my friend and I had already signed up for this half Ironman, and he had gotten into the New York City Marathon lottery. So his first marathon was the New York City Marathon in 2006.
You got the lottery through while living in New York?
Yep.
It's one of those slim and none chances.
Exactly, exactly. So he was just sort of, you know, a typical middle-aged man working a desk job, out of shape. So now he's got to get into shape. I was like, well, you know, I'm training for this half Ironman, so maybe we can go for a run together. So one of our first dates was actually we got together and went for a run, you know. So
excellent.
He came to cheer for me at my first Ironman, and then we moved in together in the city, and now, you know.
And then I think you did a couple of more?
I did the Lake Placid Ironman in 2008, was my second Ironman, because I was so hooked. And I did decent enough in that for my birthday or for Christmas in 2008, my husband got me coaching services. And so I was being coached and getting stronger and faster at all three disciplines, most particularly cycling.
Cycling. So the coaching was to make the big difference.
I think the coaching was it, and I think just the structure of somebody writing me a program and telling me how to gradually increase like intensity and duration.
Which did the Ironman do you make the breakthrough? Said, oh my gosh.
I think the second one, Lake Placid in 2008, where I finished, you know, 11 hours and 17 minutes, which is my PR time to Ironman to this date, and I've done 5 of them. And that Ironman sort of is one for the record books in Lake Placid. It poured rain the entire time. Yeah.
Now, something terrible happened 97 days after your marriage.
Indeed it did.
So tell us that story.
So, and this is all sort of from what others have told me, because I don't really remember anything in that day. But my husband and I were going for a bike ride. It was sort of like our farewell to New York City ride, because we were planning to move back to DC for his job. So we're riding 9W, which is our normal, you know, training route. And
so you've done this route many times before? Oh,
many times before and many times since. And something happened where we got into a bit of an accident. My husband ended up with a broken collarbone, and I ended up in a medevac helicopter on my way to Westchester Medical Center with a pretty severe brain injury, and all the bones in my face broken, just crushed. So yeah, so that was that for August of 2009.
Wait a minute, that must have been a very scary moment. And your husband was conscious because he
broke his shoulder. He saw everything. I don't remember anything.
How did he get involved?
He fell off his bike.
Oh, because he saw you?
Well, no, I think we both kind of crashed into each other or just crashed. I honestly don't know what happened. All I know is that I basically face planted into the taillight of a car.
That was parked on the red light, and you were in a coma for several weeks?
Yeah, I was in a medically induced coma for a few weeks in the neuro ICU at Westchester. And then I was transferred to Helen Hayes Rehabilitation Hospital.
I think you were telling me your husband quickly did some research with the best places.
Yes. My husband knew, like, if I was to recover, that I needed to immediately get to a rehab facility. So he went around, he researched, he looked into Kessler, to Rusk, I think, here in the city, to Burke, and I don't think any of them had a bed available for like a couple weeks or months. And so Helen Hayes could take me right away. So he was like, that's the place for us.
We got to give them a shout out.
Shout out to Helen Hayes, and all of my therapists there were just fantastic. I remember my speech therapist and my physical therapist, the best, just because I remember their names and was the most cognizant working with them. And so shout out to John and Tara at Helen Hayes.
You're lying there and you're hurting. I mean, you can't move. You had to relearn everything. Besides your husband, you know, what inside of you gave you the courage to go on? Was it you said you went to all these Catholic schools. Was your faith a part of it?
I spent a lot of time talking to God. I think the support system that I had, I mean, the firm that I was working for at the time was so generous with sending stuff to Westchester and to Helen Hayes. My family, who never once sort of doubted that I would get back to the old Jess. You know, they never once thought like, well, you're injured, you know, you should maybe, you know, just take it easy, you know, why bother being an attorney again? Why bother running? Why bother riding? Like, nobody ever sort of discouraged me from doing anything. And I remember one of the first things I thought of at Helen Hayes, my husband and I had signed up for the New York City Marathon that year. I think it was the 40th anniversary. And my brother-in-law and sister-in-law, so my husband's brother and sister-in-law from Rochester, got into the marathon as well, and we're going to do it. We were all going to do the marathon. So at Helen Hayes, this is like mid-September when I'm sort of regaining, you know, cognizance and thinking things. I'm like, I got to start training for the marathon. I got to get out of here. I got to start training. My husband was like, no, not at all. So I also had what's called dissected arteries, vertebral arteries in the neck, which is when basically there's two arteries that feed blood to the brain. And they can dissect fairly easily, like with a sharp head movement or just whatever, and a flap of skin will kind of break off. And as blood is fed to and from the brain, it coagulates in that flap of skin and forms like clots. And if you were to throw one of those clots in the artery going to your brain, like that's a stroke. That's a stroke. And so I wasn't allowed to do any physical activity that would like jar the brain, that would jar the things.
That would scare you to stay mobilized.
Right, exactly, until, you know, until I had the testing done that would clear it and say that it had healed, which took a few months. So so eventually it healed. And in terms of your question of what made me sort of motivated to get back out there, you know, honestly, I think it was never in question that I would get back out there, you know, with athletics or with, you know, going back into my profession. You know, what was in question was at what level I would be able to do those things. And so, you know, I remember being cleared to run in December of 2009.
Wow, that's been a big day.
Yeah, it was a big deal because I was so happy to be able to run, and I knew that before I was able to run certain times and be fast enough to qualify for Boston. Actually, I hadn't yet at the time registered for the Boston Marathon because I had a qualifying time. And I was like, well, I don't know if I'll be allowed. But before the artery had healed, I was like, you know, I'm just going to sign up for Boston. And so when it was cleared, I was like, oh, thank God, at least I'll be able to train and run that. I don't really care how long it takes. I was able to get back on my bike on my trainer indoors from the get-go. So I think that's what aided a lot in the recovery, is being able to be physically active. I did run Boston in 2010, and that was
very emotional.
That was incredible.
The doctors must have been there too, right?
No, they weren't. They were not there. I don't even know that they knew that I was doing it.
Really?
Well, actually, one of them at the time did know. She's my neurologist now. At the time, she's my epileptologist for the epilepsy as a result of the accident. She knew I was running and made sure that I'd signed off or told the directors of the race that I had, you know, epilepsy and was on these medications and whatnot, so in case anything happened. That was actually the longest my husband and I had been away from each other since the accident. Because when I got from rehab, I was under 24/7 supervision. My husband had to quit his job, essentially, to take care of me. And so, you know, we did everything together. He came to a lot of my rehab appointments with me. So I get on this bus at 6:30 in the morning, and he's not going to see me until like 12 or 1 o'clock.
Oh, okay.
So that was the longest we had been apart.
Wow.
So, which was fine by me, because you know, like, it's one thing to be married, it's another to be together 24/7.
That's right. Anyway, you had a race to do, you know.
Exactly, I had a race to do, and it ended up...
Boston is so exciting.
That was one of the better race experiences. It wasn't my fastest time ever, but at the time it was a PR by 5 seconds.
Wow.
3:29:55. It was a 5-second PR, and it was just, you know, they say about Boston, there's something about, you know, making that left turn onto Boylston and seeing the finish line is a huge thing. I mean, just to like cross the start line for me was just amazing.
But they also say Boston's very tough. You must have been on high adrenaline.
It was just, that was one of the most incredible races, and Boston is just a special race in and of itself, but that was just...
But you mentioned this epilepsy, so as a consequence of this crash?
Yeah, as a consequence of the brain injury, I've had a couple seizures, which are
When did that manifest itself?
A couple months after the accident, I was at home riding my bike on the trainer and just had a seizure, and thankfully my husband was there, and he knew it was...
24/7 guy?
Yeah, my 24/7 guy was there. He knew I was going to have a seizure before I did, because I had started to like... I said, oh, it's raining out, and sometimes when you have epilepsy, some of the warning signs, if you're lucky and get a warning sign, is you'll have like an aura. It can be like a vision or like a feeling or just a smell. And my husband was like, it's not raining. And he's like, she's probably about to have a seizure. So he picked me up off my bike and you know, called 911 and everything. So that was the first time.
So they anticipated you having before your first seizure.
Well, I don't know if I had them in the hospital under sedation. I'm not sure. Like, but I had been on, you know, epilepsy medication from the time I got home from the hospital. And then had a seizure, and then so obviously continued on.
You talked to God about that, and
yeah, I was like, "What up with that, God?
How much burden are you going to give me here?"
Yeah, right. But thankfully, it's very, very well controlled on medication, and I'm under the care of like a wonderful doctor. And so I had a second seizure that following January.
This is a lifetime thing, the epilepsy.
You know, it is. But thankfully for me, like, it's very well managed on medication, and I think the side effects of the medication or the effects of the injury, I don't know. But I'm able to manage them just with being physically active, which is something that has been like a go-to for me to just sort of ground myself.
But I seen you now wearing this terrific looking shirt that says City Coach.
Yep.
So when did you discover City Coach, or did City Coach
my
discover
goodness.
you?
I can say Jonathan discovered me.
My name's Jonathan Kane, and I coach runners.
So the New York Roadrunners used to have a sprint try, which they no longer have. So in 2010, they had it on August 1st, which was a year to the date after our cycling accident. You know, I said to my husband, I want to do this race. He's like, sure. What a wonderful way to celebrate, you know, the anniversary of the accident. And so I did the race, you know, I'm riding my bike and I hear this crash behind me and I'm like, oh no, I turn around and I look and this woman had crashed her bike. And I was like, oh, that sucks, you know, and my heart went out to her because this is a year to the date after my crash. And I'm like, I hope she's not as injured as I was. And all of a sudden the woman who crashed comes just flying past me. And I'm like, you go, girl. So we finished the race, and I sought her out after the race to congratulate her. So it turned out to be Nicole Sinqui. And so I went up to her, and I said, the future Mrs. Kane. So I went up and congratulated her, and I said, listen, I saw you crash right behind me, and I was just terrified for you, and then all of a sudden you go flying past me. So congratulations, you know, I hope that you're okay. And Jonathan, her now husband, was standing next to her, and like, I think we know who you are. Because they had read about it on this woman's blog. She has a blog about bikes and whatnot. Jennifer Benepe. I had no idea.
Very well known.
I had no idea.
In the cycling community.
I had no idea. I mean, I know she has this bike blog, and I never really looked further into like why she has a bike blog, but she was there the day I crashed my bike and actually came up to my husband as he's loading me onto the helicopter and was like, asked him a question. He's like, I don't blog about my wife. I mean, and I don't blame him because at the time he like thought it was dead. Oh. So anyway, so they knew who I was as a result of like just being in the cycling community. I think so Jonathan knew who I was, and then
he invited over to his place. You know?
Well, yeah, and then we became best friends. You know, I went there that night. No, but he was emailing me and reaching out to me and just invited me to come run with their Thursday night group runs in the park. And I kind of like ignored his emails for a while. I forget when I met them again. I forget if it was at like a team run night, but I just decided, you know what, you seem like pretty cool people. I'll show up for a run. And I did, and the rest is history. You know, they are just, in addition to my family and friends who never once doubted me, like he has never once sort of made me feel like I shouldn't do something or couldn't do something, and he agreed to coach me, and Nicole is just, they're just, you know, the most supportive, encouraging people, and as our fellow athletes on City Coach, everyone is just, it's just such a supportive community of athletes out there generally, not only on City Coach, and just, I think when I was in Helen Hayes, having my identity crisis that's ongoing to this day, you know, I was, you know, Jess Purcell, attorney, wife, triathlete, you know, soon to be, hopefully, mother. You know, we were just going to start this family, and then all of a sudden I'm laying in this rehab hospital, and I don't know who I am anymore. You know, I'm questioning everything about my identity, and then I get home, and, you know, still a wife, still a person. Months go by, I'm like, okay, I guess I can be an athlete to whatever extent that's possible. Yeah, you know, I think as long as you put yourself out there to do something, you can consider yourself an athlete. And I'm so happy that I've been able to get back to a certain level.
Have you done a Ironman or half Ironman since?
I have done several. So Coach Kane coached me for my comeback Ironman in Arizona. They have this thing in the medical community called back to baseline. And so, you know, for a patient with a serious brain injury, you know, as soon as you can, walk and talk and write your name and read and go back to work, they consider you kind of back to baseline. I considered myself back to baseline when I'd finished an Ironman. So Jonathan coached me back to baseline, and that was an emotional race for my husband as well as for myself, because it was sort of like, we didn't know if we would get there.
Right.
So,
and Arizona was your first Ironman.
That was my first Ironman, and it was my comeback Ironman.
And your husband was there cheering
you on.
He was
there again. Exactly.
Right.
So
But now, what does the future hold for you?
Another Ironman. So my husband has gotten into that distance. He'd gotten into tries before we crashed our bikes. He did the New York City Ironman, the one and only New York City Ironman that they had back in 2012 was his first Ironman. So we did that, and his brothers have gotten into triathlon. So my husband is going to do his second Ironman in Lake Placid, and his two brothers are going to do their first Ironman in Lake Placid this July.
You'll be joining them?
I will also be doing it because I can't let them have all the fun. But so this will be the first time that they're all racing in the same age group. So they will all be competing against each other.
Like a bragging rights.
The three Zebrak brothers, exactly. I have my guesses and my hopes. I mean, I hope I'm the first one across the finish line.
It sounds like you got the more experience.
I'm the most experienced of the four of us, but my husband does have one under his belt, which will, I think, pay volumes for him.
All right. And he's trained by Coach Kane?
He's being coached by Coach Kane, yeah. And so I'm kind of like, don't tell Coach Kane.
Okay.
I'm sort of peeping in on his workouts and basically doing what Coach Kane tells him to do.
And you mentioned being a mom. Is that in the future?
I don't think so. With a brain injury like this, you're never the same person again.
Yeah.
I think I'll just be a mom to my kittens and be a wife to my husband. I'll never say never, because I'm still able to have children. And there is just concerns about being on epilepsy medication. I mean, it's totally safe. People have kids all the time when they're on medication. You just have to be under close doctor supervision.
I see.
But I think it might not necessarily be a risk that I want to take
risk
on.
for yourself and the baby.
Right. And I think, I think for now, just dealing with the day-to-day with this type of injury,
well, like you
I'm
said,
doing okay.
You're not closing the door on
exactly.
it.
I'll never say never, but it's kind of like on hold. We just got two kittens, and I can barely handle them. I got a husband, so I already have a child, basically.
Well, wait a minute. He took care of you.
He did. I think that without him...
There's your camera here. You want to say anything to him?
I do. I want to say just thank you, and I love you with all my heart, and thank you to just my City Coach family and friends and Coach Kane, and to my mom and dad, and to my brothers, and to my in-laws, who never once doubted me or never once made me think that I shouldn't do something or shouldn't try. So just thank you, and I love you.
On that note, thank you so much.
Thank you, Will. Thank you so much.